How are you this morning? It's bright and early morning. You know, this is year number 31 for us. So if there's anyone out here in the audience that's been here for 31 years, congratulations. You're obviously older than me, but I'm only 32. All right, this is part of the military sci-fi track, media track, folks. And we have the pleasure of introducing these guests to you right now, so we're going to get started. So without any further ado, I'd like to bring out some very, very special people associated with Battlestar Galactica, but this first individual is associated with the real realm of space. Please allow me to introduce to you guys American astronaut and engineer, Mr. Garrett Reisman. All right, next up we got coming up. She was known as Kate, or Kat, on Battlestar Galactica, my apologies, Luciana Caro. She said, who, me? And of course, next up we have Dr. Gaius Baltar, James Callis. And we all know this one is Starbuck. Katie Sackle! Okay, we are awaiting the arrival of two more, but in the meantime, let's give a nice round of applause for these lovely individuals from Battlestar Galactica and a real live astronaut here in LA. Alrighty, do we have our microphone holders out there? Where are you? There should be two people out in the audience that are, okay.
And, oh my gosh, we know her as number 6, and also Gina, and one of my best friends, Trisha Helfer!
I thought robots were always on time. I don't get this. All right, folks, as usual, if you have any questions you'd like to ask our fantastic guests, there are people out in the audience with microphones. They'll get your attention. You need to line up behind them. So you might want to do that now if you're ready to answer or ask any questions. In the meantime, how you guys been? James, Trisha, Mike, I think the last time I saw you guys, we had Eddie here, and we had Bamber here, and a bunch of other you guys, and you were just, you know, a little above yourselves. If you guys saw that panel, that was pretty interesting to see. Trisha, good to see you again, as usual.
Thank you, sorry for being late. Probably fans getting here, but hello, wifey.
Yeah, let's make sure all those microphones are live up here, guys. You might have to pull them close to you.
We'll share.
Before we get started, and this being the first panel of the weekend, we all lost a very special friend. I know he's a very special friend of mine, and I'd like to give a little bit of credence to the fantastic, immortal Mr. Richard Hatch. Richard has been a regular staple here at DragonCon each and every year. The guy is so outgoing and caring, much like these individuals that are up here today. But that is just one tiny star that has ascended, who we miss right now. But this panel is called Operation Cylon Rising. And before we get to the real folks and looking for questions out there in the audience, let's talk to the real life astronaut down at the end of the table. Hi Garrett, how you doing?
Doing great, how are you?
Good, what's it like up there?
It's awesome up there. Being up there, probably the coolest thing on a day-to-day basis is being able to float. And when I I say fly, I really mean fly, because as soon as you push away from a wall, you go shooting across the space station like you're Superman. And if you ever had that dream where you can just put out your arms and start flying, it's like that every day.
Awesome. And I understand you're associated with SpaceX as well, so is there any thing in the future for you to possibly return to space?
You know, you have to talk to Elon Musk about that. He's my boss, and I don't want to get ahead of any decisions he might make, but you never know. So I should add also, by the way, the way I ended up on this panel is they asked me, I was watching Battlestar up in space. So they said, you can take one show with you to space, what do you want? I said, Battlestar, of course. So I'm watching all the episodes as we're going through the final season, and then they said, well, who would you like to have a teleconference with? And I said, well, Ron Moore and David Icke would be great. And they got on the thing, we're talking, and I said, hey guys, I'm loving this flying around, this floating. The one beef I got with you got this artificial gravity thing, and you got everybody walking down there on the decks of the Galactica. What's up with that? You're taking away the best part. And Ron Moore said, Garrett, you have any idea how expensive those special effects are?
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, sir. It's a real true honor for someone who's actually been off the grounds of Earth, I guess I can say. Fantastic. Are there any questions from anyone out there in the audience as of yet? Luciana, how are you?
I'm great.
Good,
Thank you.
good. We run fast and hard here on these panels. We really enjoyed your character as Kat. Can you tell us a little bit of how you obtained that role and what became of it after?
So I auditioned for the role. It was supposed to be like a one-day role where I just came on for the day. And my audition scene was me and my Viper in battle. And so I thought, how am I going to make this interesting? So I went to my neighbor's house and I asked my neighbor for his Xbox control pad. Because I just like, you know, like how do pilots, what do they do when they're, you know, in a Viper and, you know, in battles? And I just imagine like when you see kids and they're just like playing video games and they're like, so I literally I brought my joystick in, or whatever, the control pad, and I did the whole scene, like imagining that I was playing a video game, and I think they got a kick out of it, and they hired me for the role, so yeah, that's how I got the role. And then I was lucky enough that I guess they liked what I did, and they brought me back, and back, and back, and back, and so from one episode ended up being, I think, 19 episodes, so I was very grateful.
Awesome. We have a large contingency of colonial warriors here at DragonCon each and every year, and I'm sure they're extremely happy to see you to show up here at DragonCon. So you have a lot of followers out there. Trisha, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
Your role as the lovely Six, how many are there of you?
Oh gosh. If you count all the ones in the background, that some weren't me and some were me, yeah, too many to count.
How does it feel to have to break into different personalities of each one of those Cylons, and how, in God's name, do you remember which one you were portraying at the time? They say, okay, your number is 6.5, or you're doing 6.2 right now.
Well, I think the ones that we had different names for, and you know, they clearly had different storylines. I think there was probably about 9 of them. But, and if I'm trying to think of them all, which I won't do right now, but to me, they were different people. So some of them looked different. You know, it started with Gina with the Pegasus episodes because my hair all fell out in chunks the morning we were about to film one of those scenes from dyeing it white. And that's kind of what started it. I said to Ron and David, I said, well, my hair's all messed up now. Can we have to get a wig. Can we just buzz it like they've shaved your head in prison? And they wouldn't let me do that. But we did. That's what started the different hair color. I said, well, let's make them different. And, you know, I saw them as different people. Their experiences with, if they were all just robots that had the exact same experience, they would have been duplicate copies of each other, pretty much. But since they had varying levels of interaction with humans and humanity, and what was that interaction? You know, was it Caprica 6 who you know, fell in love with a human? Was it Gina who was tortured by humans? Was it, you know, Sonya in the later episode, in the last season, who was, at this point, so much had gone on and was trying to help broker peace with humans? So to me, they were complete different characters. I just happened to be the same person playing them.
Well, you just executed that so incredibly that we fell in love with. Okay, good. We have some questions out there. Let's go ahead to that side. Hello, sir.
Hey guys. So this question is for James and Trisha. First of all, Trisha, by the way, your performance in Lucifer was amazing.
Thank
you being the female god, it's kind of hard to conceive of what was going on there, considering both of you were creating existence at the same time. But my question for you guys is, it seems like Justin Roiland gets a lot of stars to voice these one-liners, just these one-off characters in Rick and Morty, and you guys did your own characters in that show for an episode. So how did that even happen? Like, what was the process for you guys even ending up voicing just like a couple of lines on that show?
They just approached your agents, right?
I was told Trisha was doing it.
And I was told James was doing it, so...
I didn't know that the characters were going to look like us. That was a kind of bonus.
and we didn't get to work together either. We weren't in the studio at
weren't in
the
the
same time.
studio. And literally it was a big deal maybe because that's such an incredible show. And then it was like, an hour to drive to the place. And I think that I was done, I think, in under 10 minutes. Just like, wait a minute, what am I doing? No, that's it, you're good. And you're in the cartoon.
Yeah, those things, they're really fun, obviously the show is a really fun show and good, and so it's an easy yes. Certainly not a big paycheck, but it's just fun, and I had no idea that it was going to look like us either, so I just wish we got to be in the studio at the same time.
Michael asked if it's fully cast because he'd like to be in that. Yeah. Okay, this side of the room. Hi.
Hi, my question is for everyone. The ending is super controversial, and so I was wondering how each person felt about the way the show went in the 4th season and what the ending was like.
The ending you said was super controversial.
Yes.
You were wondering how everyone felt about the 4th season. The
Yes.
entire 4th season or the end of the 4th season?
Sure, whatever.
Yeah.
All right, so for me, I could never question Ron Moore's imagination and brilliance. Personally, I would have liked to have seen it continue on a little bit longer, because I had just been resurrected. But that's just me selfishly saying, really? So, but kudos to Ron, he knew what he was doing, but yeah, that's my thought about it.
Katie, what do you think about you guys coming upon prehistoric, whatever the hell planet that was? How did you feel about the 4th season and season finale?
Yeah, it's been so long. And I've actually never watched the series.
Ladies and gentlemen, Katie Sackle!
I watched the sort of the early cuts to feel a through line. We used to steal them from Sharn, one of the co-producers in The Office, so we could see sort of what happened, but I'd never seen it with the special effects and everything like that. Trish and I were actually just talking about potentially watching the whole thing together. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, from my perspective, from Starbuck, it was sort of one of those things where I begged them to have her not, walk off into the sunset holding hands with Lee, because I just didn't think that that's where she would be happy. She was never content in peace, and so. For me, I thought it was great because I didn't know what you could actually make of that, where she could go from being not her. So I think that making it sort of intentionally ambiguous sort of allowed the end of the series to mean different things for the audience. You know, whatever you wanted to believe happened to her is where she went for you, or who she was. And I think that that's sort of, you know, one of the things that's so great about the series is that it, you know, the emotional impact that it had on the viewer is completely different for each individual, depending on who you identified with as a person and who, you know, you sort of went along with. So I don't know, I liked it. I mean, I think we could have probably done another season, but you know, I think it was sort of time, you know, I think it was a beautiful way to end it, but I'll let you know when I watch it. Next year I'll be like, God damn it! What is she? What is she?
How about you, Michael? How do you feel about the last season?
So there's no point in me saying anything about it, because I would echo exactly what Katie said. I did play Starbuck.
Okay, we have a question on inside. Yeah.
Hi, I have a quick question for Katie. Basically, how did you keep a straight face when you're in a bathtub with Howard Wolowitz?
So this is actually a really funny story that involves Trisha.
Most of her funny stories involve me, just saying.
And alcohol, which it does. So Trisha was shooting 2.5 Men, and I was bringing tequila for her in my car in LA traffic. And I was driving and I couldn't get there, and I'm literally calling her and texting her. It wasn't illegal then. As I was driving, and I'm like, I'm almost there, and she's like, hurry up! And
This was my first live show, like
yeah. So I get there and I hand her the tequila, and she like basically kicks me out of her trailer and like slams the door and was like, okay, now go away. I was like, well, I can't watch. And she was like, no, I'd rather you didn't. So I was sort of like heading out to my car, and I ran into Chuck Lorre, who was like, so when are we gonna get you on? And I said, well, you know, because I had just seen Trisha. And I said, I don't know. As soon as you make me Wolowitz's number 6, I'll come by. Or I'll go on the show. And that's sort of how it came about. And then they did it. But that scene was funny because I don't know if you've ever been to a foam party, like in Cancun, but like people disappear in those parties and never come back. Like every time you put foam 6 feet high and like alcohol, people are gone. So it was that foam, so there was no actual water, and I kept slipping and kicking him and his family stuff. And so finally, we had to put our feet against each other under the bubbles because you couldn't stay up in the bathtub. And so it was really, I was terrified. That was the first time I had done live TV, and I was like, I need tequila. But it was fun. That's how it all came about.
Trisha, you have any more? You know, there's my mic here.
Do I have any more?
You have any more to add to that?
To that? No, she's telling it exactly correct. It was my first live sitcom, live studio audience, and she was very sweetly being a very good friend and brought me some little mini tequila bottles. And then I kicked her out. I said, I don't want anybody I know in the audience. Like, I didn't let my managers, my agents, my husband, nobody. And, but her coming all the way there. But I feel like not so bad about it now that she got a job on doing that on Big Bang Theory. So,
I got paid very handsomely for driving tequila too.
Eventually, I want to know a little bit more about these foam parties in Cancun.
Just Google them, like people don't come out.
Where are we, on this side of the room, I think? No, or we're on this side. I can't remember. With that side? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Trisha. I recently saw your Hallmark movie where you had a scene with Tim Russ, and I wondered if you all discussed Battlestar versus Star Trek.
Well, thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. We did not discuss it. He's a lovely gentleman. But no, we didn't discuss it. And actually, Paul Campbell was my love interest, who was Billy, obviously, on Battlestar Galactica. So it was, I know, right? I was like, a lot of sci-fi people there. No, we didn't actually discuss it, but just chatted. I think we only crossed over 2 days on set. And most of our focus during the day was trying not to sweat through our clothes because it was extremely humid down there. But I wish I had a better answer for you, but no, we didn't discuss it.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, I'm so excited to see you guys. You guys are amazing. But I was just wondering, in the show, are there any unscripted moments that weren't supposed to be in the original script that you that comes to mind? Just like any impromptu moments?
Apart from the 4th season.
Anything?
There are a few things that kind of, you've got the script and you've got the lines. Some of those lines don't, you might have an idea about how you might say them. Little tiny changes, it changes the word or something, but doesn't change the inference of the scene or the way that the scene is supposed to end. But I think that everybody here, there's bits all over Battlestar Galactica which are, on some level, the creation of the actors who were playing the parts, I think it's fair to say. I'm going to go now.
The very first scene, at the card playing scene with Hilo and Sakov and me, and who else was there? I don't remember. Go ahead. Oh yeah, AJ was there, I think. And the actors didn't know each other, didn't know where the characters were going to go. But we were aware that there was this tension between the two characters. And the script just had me saying Starbuck, that's quite the call sign. But I knew that, when I first said it, I really started getting was Starbuck. That's quite the call sign. And it's got Sakov. That was a good start to the relationship.
That scene, we showed them in the morning and nobody told me to not inhale cigars. And we had had so much coffee, and then I was smoking these cigars and inhaling them, and I was like turning green. I'm not supposed to inhale those. And I was like, I'm like 23 years old. How the hell do I know? It's not like I'm a connoisseur of like whiskey and cigars. You are now.
I think one of the things that I can think of that that I laid down the law on was in Downloaded. You might remember this. The director, it was his first time directing this particular at all on the show. But he had a vision for, it was the first time we saw the resurrection, and any of them being resurrected, and that disgusting goo. And he had this vision where we were all going to be dressed in tan colors, and it was very zen, very peaceful, very just like nothing like a real birth, but just a beautiful moment. And we were rehearsing it, and we had to be, Grace and I both had to be multiple times in and out because we had multiple characters around. And this was just coming off of Deanna, Six breaking her leg in the underground explosion, and Deanna wanting to kill her and say, you can just resurrect, and Six didn't want to do that. And so I thought, well, if it's just a beautiful experience, why wouldn't she want to come back? Her memories are still there, to come back in a brand new body that's not damaged. And I said, it can't be that easy of an experience. So I got in the tub first, and I showed the other actors what I was going to do when I got in the tub, because they had a photo double in there just laying there. And my idea was that the last thing they remember of how they got killed is the first thing they kind of wake up with. So to me, seeing that the one that was waking up at that time, I think got shot or something like that. No, the one that was waking up was Caprica, that had been blown up in the explosion protecting Baltar, in Baltar's house. So for me, it was like all the glass coming from the window and just like to that. So that's how I woke up, was just in this panic and that type of thing. And that sort of, I think, at least for my characters, that's how it informed me of waking up. But it was very different from the director's image of a vision of very peaceful and just opening your eyes.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. It really is. Yeah. Alrighty, I guess we're on this side of the room. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great.
It's a Star Trek uniform you know you're wearing, right?
Yes, I apologize. I didn't.
And it's also the wrong color. It should be blue.
Blue and red have a tendency to go together a lot of times.
Alright, take this outside, okay? What's your question, sir?
I was just wondering, did any of y'all have any inclination about, that this show is going to turn into the magnum opus that it became?
No, I took the role because I wanted to shoot a gun. It's true, I had always, up until that point in my career, I played like ditzy blonde roles, and so I was really trying to reinvent myself, and my mom always said, when your face falls and your tits hang, you're gonna need to have a job. So she goes, make a career out of playing the best friend. And I was like, all right, sounds good. So that was sort of my idea. Thanks, Mom. Best advice I ever got. So my idea was to change the course of where my career was going, and the only way to do that was, so that's why I took Battlestar. But I remember Eddie sitting us all down, and it was before the miniseries, or during the shooting of it, and he was adamantly, because Eddie is so big and so filled with emotion and animated, and he was telling us that this is going to change our careers, and this show is going to be huge, and this show is going to be impactful, and so many of us were children, and we were like, what is this guy talking about? But he knew from the moment he read that script and that sort of manifesto that Ron Moore put on the cover of the script, that this was going to be important. And we all sort of we just sat back and listened to him, and he'd been doing this for so long, it was amazing. But had we known, had I known at the time, it would have put so much pressure on me as a young actor, I think I would have freaked out. But because there was no pressure going in, and we had no idea, and we were sort of sequestered up in Vancouver, we didn't really understand even at the time. The internet was literally just coming about. You had to go to an internet cafe to log online. So there wasn't this massive social media to even know that we were creating something that was impactful until it was literally over, and then we realized what we had created. But Eddie knew from the very beginning.
And I think what it finally became, because a lot of us fans who knew of the classic Battlestar Galactica back in the 80s, you guys remember the 80s, right? And Lauren Green, and we know Lauren Green from, Bonanza, I think, and we're like, okay, Battlestar Galactica, and because Star Wars had just basically, I think Return of the Jedi was probably the movie that was out at the time, I'm not sure, and all the special effects that were readily available at that time, it was like, oh, okay, they're going to do a space opera on television. We don't have to go to the theaters. What's this going to be like? And that blew us away. And then when you guys renewed it and came up with all of the newer technology and showed us what could be done at that time, we were like, holy crap, let's go to Dragon Con. Yeah, so, all right. You good, sir? Thank you. Hi, over there.
Hi, so I was lucky enough to have seen Richard at a con, and he was so charismatic and loving of the fans, and I was wondering if you guys had any great memories of him.
The number of people, I didn't do conventions for the first few years of Battlestar. It just never occurred to me. I had asked to do them, but I'm an actor. I've been acting for 30-some years before Battlestar. I was like, what would I do? I don't know what I'd do there. And Richard, when I did, DragCon was actually the first, because Katie Sackhoff backed out, and they said, would you please come down? And I said, yeah, what am I supposed to do then? But Richard, certainly, the number of people who would come up to talk to me and said, hey, we have a mutual good friend. Really? Yeah, Richard Hatch. And they meant it. Richard Hatch was genuinely a friend of the sci-fi community, and he made you realize that we're all an extended family. He had all the time in the world for everyone, and people would come and say, ask them a question, something, you'd say, yeah, I can help you with that. When are you going to do that? Is it the school? Is it here? Oh yeah, well, I can stay an extra day. Yeah, and we'd be, way in the middle of nowhere with it. But briefly, that embodies Richard. So say we all, guys.
James, you had some scenes with Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I was a fan of the original Battlestar, but I certainly watched it. And what I mean is, in the sense I was kind of a bit too young, that I've spoken to Richard about this, that there was a scene that then we recreated, but it was slightly different. So if you've heard this before, then I apologize, but it was the first Battlestar Galactica that Richard and Dirk Benedict were in, and Lon Green, and Jane Seymour, all those people. There was a scene in it that for me was really impactful, and it's Apollo arrives back on the planet, and he's in a Viper. And there's hundreds of people collecting around in the background, and there's simply no room, and they're going to die. And I remember watching it when I was about 7 years old, just like, well, what's going to happen to all those people who are left behind? Because as a young kid, television had always been sewn up so nicely, like a little chocolate box. Yes, everything's going to be okay. And when we recreated it, then my character got on board because he was a liar with Hilo and Sharon. There was slightly more. We got 5 or 6 people into the, is it Raptor? Yeah. Into the Raptor. But the first one was like this thing about, no, there's only room for one. In the background was all of the apocalypse and the smoke and the buildings, and it was really troubling. And one of the things I just remember about the show was Richard Hatch himself, just in the sense of, who looks like Richard Hatch? Nobody. He's so handsome, and yet something else within his eyes. I'm not sure. It was like, he reminded me of somebody who's like a prince. He makes the right decision for the right reasons. He's humble. He's a goodie. If he's on your side, then you've actually got a chance. And then to meet the man in real life, and he was like that, was kind of remarkable. He's still very handsome when he did our show, and yet there was something else. I'd say in French, je ne sais quoi, something I cannot put my finger on, that was burning behind his eyes. And it was a warmth, and a kindness, and a wisdom, and we miss him. That's all I was going to say.
That's fantastic. That was right on point. Thank you so much for that. Where were we? Oh, okay, sorry. This side? Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. This is a general question. So each of you turned in a really outstanding performance in your respective roles. But if you could choose a different role or a different character, who and why?
Within the show, you're asking? Or
sure.
Anywhere else? So within the show?
Within the show, if you could.
Who wants to trade?
For me, it'd be a toss-up between President Roslin and Starbuck, just because I like running around with guns and being a badass too. And I would have liked sometimes not having that tight red dress all day long, every day, pretty much, and dyeing my hair white. So, but no, and Roslin obviously was Laura Roslin. So those two, I think, yeah, I mean, without going into male characters, changing my gender and everything in terms of what I could actually play being a female, would be Starbuck or Roslin.
Luciana? If you had a chance of taking anyone else's role in Battlestar Galactica, who would you like? I will protect you.
I think that Starbuck was the most badass character on the show, and if I could play any other character, it would probably be Starbuck. She was fierce.
to go with Starbuck. No, it's because we haven't seen. No. Honestly, there was a rooted. This is going to sound strange. Rooted to the earth, but you were in space. You were very grounded and just delicious in your confidence with the gun and with the dudes and with your shirt and with your word. I don't know. There was something about you that was just bring it.
Yeah, and a heartbreaking vulnerability.
But you had so much vulnerability as well. There was like this beautiful combination. So I mean, that would be the antithesis of my character.
And Michael?
No, yeah, I'm waiting. Well, it's hard to top physically playing Ty because he had. You don't know this, but in usually shooting television or movies, but television especially, you have a wardrobe change constantly. Okay, Hogan, we're moving on to scene. Okay, you go back to the trailers and change, and we're going to set up, etc., etc. I had one outfit. I had two: the dress uniforms and my normal outfit. And now that was not lost on me. Except for I went down to the planet, and the planet was basically one outfit. He had a patch.
All right, before we get to Katie, Garrett, if you were cast in Battlestar, would you want to be Starbuck also, or is there something else?
Yes, I'd want to be Starbuck. I would have to want to fly a Viper, and yeah, she was the biggest badass of them all, so yeah, that makes sense. Actually, your character reminded me a lot of my commander in Atlantis, Ken Ham, who was the biggest, yeah, you met him, Logan. You remember Ken? He was the best, by far. I flew with a lot of really great pilots, and he was by far and away the best. We did stuff in T-38s I've only seen in video games, so. And every time I was watching the show, actually, I kept noticing comparisons in some, you know, in non-physical terms.
All right, we go to James. James,
yeah.
Anyone other than Starbuck that you would do?
Oh dear, I suppose I've got like more than one answer. I was pretty happy being Gaius Baltar, in a way. I mean, there was just, it came with, what's it like, some good parts and some bad parts. The bad part was that everybody hated me. That's part of the bad part, that they loved hating me. There was this one scene where I was supposed to be taken up from the planet after Aaron had smacked me in the face, and I wasn't in the body bag, but the inference was that my character was being taken away to a private chamber to be tortured, and he was in this body bag. And when they said cut, the whole cast and crew went over and kicked it. It was a wonderful day. It was just a really wonderful day. Playing one of the other characters, I think I would have found really, really difficult. That's about what I'd say.
I think we were all right for our characters, you know. We've been asked this question before, and it's fun to kind of hypothesize, but at the end of the day, I'm glad I was 6. You know, I think we're all glad we were the characters we were, because we had fun.
All right, Katie, other than Baltar, who would you, if you could trade this role, if you actually had no choice and you needed to be someone else on the show, they offered you someone else, or you had the choice to choose, who would you like to be?
Adama. I was so envious of the Cylons because, like, they got to play multiple versions of you know, these characters, and And I always loved that. I mean, like Hogan, I was pretty much in the same wardrobe for 7 years. And you know, there were parts of it that were amazing. I didn't wear any makeup on the show. They didn't do anything to my hair. I walked in with wet hair and I put some oil in my hands and rubbed it in my hair and I walked on set. Trish had been there for 2 hours at that point, and you know, they were putting the wig on and doing all this stuff and had this, you know, this beautiful red dress and these amazing heels, which she absolutely hated. And you know, there was a part of me that was like, I want to be pretty. You know, I want to like get into these things, and I saw them.
Well, you know what? I'm interrupting you because you said I wanted to be pretty, but I was talking with Tom Ellis on set Monday night, and I was saying that I was coming here, and he asked who all was coming, and there's also 2 other Lucifer cast here, and I mentioned all you guys, and he's like, oh, Katie, she was so hot on the show. I had such a thing for
Well, it's how I scored my boyfriend too. He thought the same thing, but to me, I just looked like I was like this insecure young girl, and I think that's where the vulnerability came from to the character. Is they'd written this really strong, capable woman, and I, as Katie, was so insecure and terrified and susceptible to the opinions of everyone around me. And so I think that it sort of like, you know, that sort of like came into that character. But I always wanted to be one of the Silents. I always wanted to like experience that kind of, you know, character development that they all got. I mean, some of the stuff that Boomer had to do was absolutely phenomenal. And Trisha, and, I mean, it was just, you know, I mean, they just fantastic work. So, you know.
You know, it's interesting. I think the brilliance of this show, one of the things that makes it so brilliant is the casting. And that's Michael Reimer, Ron Moore, etc. But basically Reimer. The one thing that makes Battlestar Galactica then is the anonymity of the cast. It's like watching a foreign film and think, geez, these are the real people. You know, nobody knew who Katie Sackhoff was. They thought that was Starbuck and Helfer and the XO, etc. I think that's got an awful lot to do with it. It was brilliantly cast because they could sense in the auditions and earlier on in the shooting where these characters were going to go and work for it. In my audition, Reimer told me that they didn't know where the Ty was going to go. They knew he had a drinking problem, but that was basically it. They mapped it out and it went from there. But I think the anonymity of the cast is a guy's fault. Who knew him before you saw him? He was here.
If I can say, you guys, we actually, as speaking for myself, I'm going to say, we cannot see any one of you in any other role because you've owned what you were assigned to portray. And I mean, to see James as anything but evil is you know, to see Katie as anything but a badass, to see Saul as anything, or Michael as anything but, you know, a tight ass. But we thank each and every one of you guys. We're not done yet, but we thank each and one of you guys for portraying and bringing to heart the characters that you are, because it's something we'll never forget in you. It's with us forever. So thank you for that. We appreciate it.
Oh, yes, I'm curious if there was an arc or an episode where you realized how special the show was going to be. Also, Katie, you were fantastic in Workaholics.
Thank you. You play a drunk, homeless, drug-addicted whore very well.
You want to be like Starbuck now? The question is, if there's any specific episode that signals that.
The very first scene we shot on the very first day of filming, when Obama gives the speech, none of us had seen each other. Well, we've seen each other in the meetings, etc. Paul Turner was there, giving the speech, and in the script, it was not the associate we all repeated at all. And when they took us forever, you've all heard this story before, because Eddie simply told it longer telling it. But we weren't ready for that. We were all kind of tired, and we finally shot it, and Eddie left where he was supposed to be at the podium and wandered around saying, with all the bodies there, and how that we have got to be responsible for what we created, etc., etc. And we will find Earth, I think he says in there. And then at the end of the speech, he's not in the mark where he's supposed to be, but he said, and so say we all. And you know, everybody kind of went, and then he looked and said, so say we all. I can see there's a great clip of you in that. You got socio, you can see James.
Yeah, no, that was, it was a bit, we've spoken about this, but it was a bit like Fear and Loathing in the third. It's like being at a kind of big rally. And so everybody's, so say we all. And then there's that thing about, if you don't shout it loud enough, then somebody afterwards is going to say, I saw him at the rally. I'm not sure he's on your side. He was pretty reticent. So then there's this thing about you're watching everybody else and you're like, yeah, no, I'll be louder than you. I'm also for it as well. And I remember watching that and just thinking, well, that's never going to be on TV. You know, because the scene's finished. This is all gravy. We won't be doing. They'd have cut out. It's another point where I was wrong.
Okay, we can't get to everyone for a single question because we have just a few more people left in line. So if no one doesn't get in line, I think we can get through this very, very quickly through the end of our show. So let's go ahead and go to that side.
Hi there. First of all, I wanted to say that I have never mourned the end of a show more than this one. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Did everyone know from the beginning who the hidden Cylons were going to be, or did you just find that out as it went along?
Excellent question. Were you guys tipped off?
I don't think Ron and David knew initially. I could be speaking out, but I mean, there was a whole. They had this. You know that the story is that when they were doing the opening credits, they were like, we need some kick, we need something. It's like the Cylons were created, and it was David who turned to Ron and went, and they have a plan. And Ron was like, what's the plan? He went, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter right now. We'll work that out. By the third season, we've worked out what the plan is. So, I mean, there was all this kind of strange thing in downtime where it was all like, what do you reckon you're a Cylon? So I don't think we really, I was certainly very surprised to find out.
Well, I mean, everybody wanted to be a Cylon because Cylons never die, and it was very frightening for the actors who weren't Cylons to get their scripts and like go through the scripts and go, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Okay, I'm still alive. You know, I mean, it was there's a lot of stress once we realized, you know, people were getting popped off. And when I was killed off, I just, you know, I wasn't done. I wasn't done with the show. I wasn't done with Ellen. And I said to Ron, is there any way I'm coming back? And he just said no. And, you know, well, and so I was steadfast and thought, well, hell, I don't have anything to lose. I don't have a job. And I would call Ron every few weeks and say, I want to come back. I'm not done. And he said, well, and I said, how about, you know, bring me back in a nightmare. Let me torture my husband because he killed me. And he's like, let me think about that. And so they wrote me in. And I got to come back, and I would call Ron every few weeks and say, it's me. Do you have anything else for me? Can I come? And he's like, actually. And then I'd come back, and literally I'd come back. And the last time I called him, he said, Kate. And I was like, oh, shit. I've really overstepped it. You know, I was feeling rather cocky and confident. And I thought I'd offended him. And he said, I've just gotten off the phone with Network, and I've pitched an idea to them that would feature your character heavily. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he said, I'll get back to you in a week. And I was like, okay. Like, you know, I don't know. And, you know, I was just thinking, how the heck could I come back? The Cylon word never crossed through my brain. So he calls me, and I'm sitting on Sepulveda Boulevard at 4 o'clock, heading north, sitting in just terrible traffic, going 0 miles per hour, and Ron calls, and I answer the phone, and I'm like, hi, and he goes, hey, and I'm like, everything okay? He's, well, I just spoke to Network, and on pins and needles, and he said, yeah, I'm sorry. And I'm like, oh, and he said, yeah, it looks like you're gonna have to come back to work for us. And I was like, that's good news. And he goes, yeah. And I said, what, as? And so he was messing with me. And he said, you're the 5th Cylon. And I'm gonna swear, I said, don't fuck with me, Ron. Now, I don't know what traffic like is, here, but when you're in the traffic jam, like, you can't move, and my foot wanted to go onto the accelerator. Like, don't, and he goes, no. I'm like, no, I'm serious. I'm sitting in, and he's like, no, you're the 5th Cylon, and I'm like, cry. What does that mean? And I literally was in the car, on the phone with him for 45 minutes, and he told me the whole thing, which I cannot remember any of it because it's like so emotional. But all I remembered was I couldn't talk about it, couldn't tell anybody, and that I was the 5th. And the whole last year or a year and a half, people, it was all about who was the 5th, who was the 5th, who was the 5th. And then I'm like given this information and had to zip it. and it was just like, I said, I'm calling my mother and I'm telling my agents. All right, and that's it. And I literally had to keep the secret for...
So you knew all the time?
No, this was after I died. So this was after they killed me off, and I'd done... It was before the strike.
Yeah.
The strike, the impending strike.
Yes.
And it was about 2 months before the strike.
So you knew, but then you knew for the next season?
Yes.
When we all...
You see, I'm such a good secret keeper because I didn't talk to anybody about it. You didn't know?
So ladies and gentlemen, if Kate Vernon shows up missing at the Walk of Fame, you can blame James Caldwell.
I know what's really funny about that is I came back to the set and I have a secret, it's like I've got little, like I've just eaten the bird and spitting out feathers going, and I thought people were looking at me funny, like, I know you're excited, like the secret eye contact, but it wasn't that.
Alrighty, unfortunately we have run out of time, but there are a number of more panels this weekend featuring the Battlestar Galactica cast and individuals, so you can catch up on them during that time. But in the meantime, we'd like to give a nice warm thank you very much for attending Dragon Con